So, gentlemen of the press, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed. We had two memoranda in council. The first one is the procurement and assemblage of Magnus Sentinel aircraft and simulator in Zaria. On the latter side, when we said during the lifetime of the government, we'll be assembling aircraft in Zaria, I saw on Twitter someone said, we told this minister to please stop shaking Igbo and see what he's saying now. So I'm happy to announce today is a reality. We will indeed assemble the Magnus aircraft, and we'll continue to do so. And not too distant future, by God's grace, the industry of civil aviation will begin to manufacture right here in country aircraft. But we're beginning by assembling these training aircraft. And it will happen very soon. So the memoranda has been passed in council. The manufacturer of the airplane, it's based in Hungary and has a company, a local company called Ingenious. It will be done in Zaria, and the total contract sum is 2,296,897,404 naira, with completion period of 18 months. And I need to explain this airplane. So the world of aviation, civil aviation, stopped in its training program the spin and spin recovery. Spin literally means to spin something. It's an unusual attitude that aircraft go through, and therefore students are taught to identify when they get into spin situation and how to recover out of that situation before it becomes a disaster. That has been, we were all trained like that as pilots, but because airplanes become more and more technologically advanced, the need for spin and spin recovery didn't arise because they're becoming more and more sophisticated. But however, again, the world realized that we still get into spin, or there is a need for this skill to be developed for recovery out of spin situation. So most manufacturers stopped producing trainers for that purpose. And so there are not many people now that do that manufacture. And the company, Mrs. Magnus, realized that gap and started to produce airplanes that can get into spin and out of it so that students can be trained on that. And because of our attention to safety, maximum attention to safety, we believe that this should come back into training in Nigeria. Even the United States of America, who at some point stopped, now have come back to training students on this spin and spin recovery. So this airplane is fully aerobatic. It goes into aerobatics, and I think the Nigeria Air Force and the Air Force around the region will be interested and excited by this development. But we are taking the lead in civil aviation. It's our intention to produce them here, assemble them here, and perhaps even in the future, sell them out to whoever is interested around the world. So this will happen, and I think the first 1 or 2 aircraft will happen, the assemblage here in Nigeria, and to fly them within the remaining 4 months that we have as a government. So it's another item that is ticked on our plate, and to which we remain grateful to President Muhammadu Buhari and his government. Then the next is the memorandum that revised estimated total cost and augmentation of contract for procurement and installation of instrument landing system ILS Cat 3 in Port Harcourt International Airport, Omagwa, Kano International Airport, and Katsina Airport. This contract was procured earlier and awarded, unfortunately due to fluctuations in foreign exchange, and of course the time it took, cost of items have increased tremendously. And that's why we are back in council, revising it with additional 546,109,336 naira and 33 kobo, with the 7.5% VAT, an additional completion period of 9 months for these airports. So this particular equipment, like we say in aviation, most of the things that we do are things that passengers don't see. Passengers are worried about the air conditioning system, the conveyor belt, and the toilets within our facility, within the terminal buildings. Of course, you'll agree with me, government has invested heavily in those, especially with the new airport terminals in Kano, in Port Harcourt, in Abuja, in Lagos, and the one coming up in Enugu. Those 4 are completed, and the one in Enugu will be completed. However, this particular ILS equipment, it helps you to shoot an approach into an airport and land with 0 visibility if you have Category 3C landing system. And we're having them all around the country. They will be in most of the airports in Nigeria. But again, like I said here also on this platform, to say that the government is making efforts to put in all of the airports, but then the airlines will have to put them an equipment to interpret our own in their own aircraft, and also to train their pilots, so that some of you will not want to go into my degree or into Kano, and they said, no, you can't go in there because visibility is low. And you say, but the minister has installed and has been giving money. So it takes 2. The airline itself will have to put the equipment in their aircraft and train their pilots to fly this facility that's being provided. These are all matters of safety, which is our primary concern in civil aviation under President Muhammadu Buhari. Thank you very much indeed. So perhaps speaking to the Nigeria Air Limited, which is a limited liability company known to Nigerian laws, which sought to have investors into the company, just like having MTN to have somebody from South Africa or Lebanon to invest, or any other company for that matter. The question is in 2 parts. One part is a court case. I don't think I should comment on something that is in court, which may be sub judice. But whether the project will continue, perhaps yes, from our perspective. There's nothing that is stopping the takeoff for the airline. And to make a quick statement that Nigeria is a market of 200 million people. And all of the airlines that are having the opportunity to do business in Nigeria love it. Love it doing it here. And the market, it's good. The potentials, not only potential, the availability of the market and propensity to fly is very high in Nigeria. We understand it in government that this is one catalyst for our economy. It will improve our GDP and contribute to connect markets and businesses and ginger our economy. And government will not just fold our hands and fold our arms and watch as the sector is becoming inefficient. And in line with the AU Agenda 2063 of integration, we believe this is one way that the country can be integrated or with the rest of Africa. You know, over 90% of airlines that are doing business in Africa are non-Africans. So, yes, the airline by God's grace will continue and it will soon start flying. Then the question of Maganos and what is the relationship between Hungary and ASEA in Nigeria? Well, they are the OEMs We're getting them to come here and assemble this aircraft, and later on to continue to produce them here in Nigeria for the first time. And the arrangement is as in the memo. We're procuring it from them, and they have helping us to establish here and assemble, just like what Peugeot was doing before and Volkswagen in Nigeria. But we'll go a step forward to do the actual manufacture. And airplanes are put together or assembled together. Engine manufacturers are completely different from airframe. For example, if you're producing an Airbus A380 or a 777, a Boeing 777, somebody is doing the wings, somebody is doing the engines, somebody is doing the landing gear, and you assemble it together. And that's how aircrafts are built all over the world, globally. Like Rolls-Royce is a manufacturer of an engine, CFM is a manufacturer of an engine, and so on. So it's our intention to begin the process of aircraft manufacture in Nigeria. All the countries that we started with them together, like Brazil, today are producing aircraft. And it's not rocket science, really. The technology is there, it's just the willpower. So we hope in the future, our entrepreneurs here will partner and continue. It's not going to be a government-controlled thing all the way, but we are kickstarting and hoping that the private sector would invest and continue with the process, and one day also we serve. Very quickly, with the time permitting, very quickly, UAE that started yesterday, they now produce parts of wide-body, multiple-aisle, high-capacity airplanes, parts. There are stabilizers and tail sections and so on. So we will continue, and that is the arrangement. We are procuring from them, and they're assembling here. Why is Zaria as a location? We do need a place where we have a facility ready, such as the hangar that we have in Zaria, which was built with government money. That will save cost. Number two, also, the manpower that we have in Zaria can be utilized for this purpose. And three, it will improve on time. And four, also add to the capacity of the Zaria as an institute, because this is a government initiative. It can only be located in a government facility. There is no Nigeria Air yet, and there is no Nigeria Airways, which has been liquidated. So the facility of Nigeria Airways has been ceded to ARIC and the rest of them. Then the category 3C is going to be, like I say, in many airports. We're going to see 15 at the start. Timeline and whether it's going to be sanctioned if these airlines do not put the system in the aircraft to see. Well, this is a very difficult one, but perhaps because we're seeing more and more new airliners, which means the aircraft, coming in. They are installed with the system that will interpret our own, the newer generation aircraft. For the older generation aircraft, because it's a commercial business decision that the airline will take, it will be very difficult for government to force them to install the equipment, because they have a choice either to fly at night and use our lights and land, or refuse to even fly completely for those periods. I just put it more clearly. Let's say Kano, for example, where the weather goes bad. Perhaps maybe in the entire year, it's about 2 to 3 weeks that it will be really, really bad for people that they cannot enter into Kano. So a Max Air can make a decision that, well, how many times in a year will I go to Kano when the weather is bad? Maybe 4 times. How much money am I going to spend to train my pilots just to fly 4 times into Kano? Okay? And what is the revenue? How many passengers? So maybe perhaps I can cede my passengers to somebody who has the equipment to go in, while I wait for the weather after 2 to 3 weeks to get good and I go. So you cannot force him, so long as he doesn't want to. if he's going to go when the weather is bad, he knows he cannot go there. So that's why we can sanction. We'll stop him from going. He's not going to go. But as to force them to put in the aircraft, since there is no safety concern, because he has the option not to go, then we won't force him to go. Finally, to say that these things, for us, even if it's one flight, is worth the money. And airports are being opened. You remember during COVID, our airports were opened because there can be an emergency. An aircraft can be flying over Nigeria, which has no business to do with Nigeria, but he enters into an emergency. Then he has to have our airports open for him too. And maybe the emergency could be at a time when the weather is bad. So maybe if we have the facility, we could save lives. So that is the intent. But as for those operating within Nigeria or having no emergency, then of course they have the choice to go or not to go. But we encourage them to do so. And whether they want to do it or not, in the very near future, since we have the policy, you cannot bring a 22-year-old aircraft into Nigeria for commercial purposes, then these kind of policies will take care of that naturally. Finally, to say that Ministry is noting all of that, and NCA is on top of its game to ensure that we all remain safe. Thank you very much indeed.